In this episode, we will talk about why do Filipinos hate Indians. Agreeable Switch says, I had 1 week vacation in Manila, but before going to the Philippines, I was told by my friends that I need to watch out because even though Indians think highly of Filipinos, the energy will never be reciprocated because Filipinos in general think of Indians very negatively. They perceive all Indians as being poor, filthy, and ugly. Having said those notions, I didn't have a problem with it because I shower twice a day at my hometown, Bangalore, and I groom myself properly. I admit I'm dark-skinned and hairy though, so maybe this was the reason. My first day in Manila was immediately tumultuous, and a lot of Filipinos began calling me itik or pangit. I don't know the meaning of those words though, but I'm pretty sure that's a derogatory term for Indians. Midway through my experience in Manila, people started to call me other derogatory terms like negro and bombay. That's where I started feeling unsafe, emotionally here. And someone just yelled, go back to your country. Indians aren't welcome in the Philippines because you look like garbage. After my unpleasant experience in this country, I realized that my friends was right all along. The Filipinos have horrid feedback about Indians. Sorry, but I decided not to come back to this country again, judging by how Filipinos treat Indians in general. I will be the first to tell you this story seems questionable the way it's written. Although I don't dispute the fact that Filipinos discriminate against Indians and dark-skinned individuals, I find it hard to believe this is actually true. However, it does give us an opportunity to discuss the realities of Indians in the Philippines. The truth is, if we are fair, no nation actually likes Indians for many reasons. They are considered to have questionable dietary lifestyle, which makes them not very pleasant when it comes to odor. Also, not using certain products because of their religion or whatever other reasons. And furthermore, Filipinos, because of self-hatred and colonialism, think that dark-skinned individuals are automatically unattractive and poor. So those things are accurate. There's no question about it. You cannot tell me otherwise. However, the way this person written their story, it makes it difficult to understand or believe. However, does not make it any less true. Marika says, I'm a Filipino here. Indians are quite familiar face among Filipinos to the point that they have a bit of a history among the locals. Now, for the longest time, Indians are practicing an informal loan that we call as 5/6. 5/6 is a type of loan which is 20% interest rate. This practice made Indians really infamous in the country to the point that it became a stereotype for Indians. Now, the reason why I discuss the 5/6 lend is because this is linked to Bombay. Bombay has been used by Filipinos to refer to anyone with Indian descent. Yes, it's been used for like centuries now. Civil Stop says, I'm so confused by this. They're so in love with Korea. I don't get it. Meanwhile, most Koreans in Korea think of Filipinos the same way the Filipinos think of Indians. Precisely. Filipinos are considered dirty, ugly, and poor by the majority of Koreans. But Filipinos, typical Filipino style, they worship anyone they seem and perceive to be better than them, i.e. lighter skin than them. They idolize these individuals. That's why the entire celebrity atmosphere or industry in the Philippines is extremely disgusting, if you ask me personally. Fragrant Estate says, most countries have prejudice towards Indians. They come to countries and create communities, then those communities treat the citizens like garbage. People don't get a bad rap for no reason. It may not be you specifically, but it's the sins of your brothers and sisters that you have to pay for. People can sugarcoat this or tell you the exact reason. Guana Stock says, the most common prejudice that I encounter is regarding body odor. Indians have this distinct odor that we've grown to instinctively recognize as Indian even if we are not looking. Our Indian American peers and managers know this, so they advise native Indians on corporate visits to shower 2 times a day to mitigate this. Having said that, I work IT in Fortune 200 companies. Most of the Indians tech I deal with are top notch. Yes, this is another factor. Indians do have a specific smell. I'm not here to be prejudiced or tell you that I am definitely against Indians because the way they smell, but it's a fact of life. It's their diet, what they eat, the spices they use produce this type of odor. John says, we don't think all Indians are poor, but honestly, that's often the first impression people get, especially from what we see on social media. In reality, Indians in the Philippines are usually businessmen, moneylenders, or students. Most of us don't really pay much attention to foreigners. As for the term Bombay, it is not necessarily derogatory unless someone uses it in a disrespectful way. It is like calling the Chinese a Chinese. I'm sorry for the someone did this to you, but you can't generalize an entire country based on one bad experience. Maybe you just ended up in the wrong city. Well, that's not true. We can't generalize. The same way you generalize all Indians is the same exact thing. If the majority of Filipinos you meet are disrespectful, rude, and racist, then you can say that yes, Indians are treated poorly by Filipinos. So you can't have it both ways. You cannot generalize an entire nation and tell them they smell bad and are poor and are dark and are ugly, but then expect us not to feel Filipinos do discriminate. So both are true. Although not right, it is true and it does happen in the Philippines. People say racism is not in the Philippines. It's the exact opposite. Everyone calls it as it is. Racism and colorism is all out here. Nervous Phone says, Filipinos tend to be very prejudiced towards everyone, really. They lack the critical thinking skills which would enable them to judge people individually or on their own merits. Therefore, generalizations are bound in this extremely simple-minded culture. And yes, in my experience, Indians are known as Bombay 5-6 for their money laundering business. Borrow 5, pay back 6. This person does not hold back when talking about Filipinos and their simple minds. Lime, as Reddit, says, yeah, colorism exists in the Philippines and it is an issue. We were raised with skin whitening ads and local celebrities who fit into the Western beauty standards. My sister's boyfriend is half Sudanese, half Filipino, and he gets called those words a lot, unfortunately. For Indians, I'm sure it isn't as common for those who are lighter-skinned Indians, but stereotypes such as body odor or pungent food is still pretty rampant for you guys. I don't judge though. I think Indians are very beautiful, and I'm sure I'm not the only Filipino who thinks this way. Sorry you had to go through this. Once again, you are the exception to the rule. Jerry Tom says, I think Filipinos' attitudes towards Indians is due to their dark skin and their general perceived socioeconomic status. My impression is that Filipinos look up to cultures that are more light-skinned and with high socioeconomic standards, hence their more positive attitudes to Caucasians, East Asians, Korea, and Japan. Real Neil says, couldn't find the quote, but some black Redditor wisely mentioned to not expect as much because Filipinos aren't even comfortable accepting their own skin. The darker tribes in the country face the same, if not more, discrimination as you did. Sorry that happened to you. I assure you that it's not the whole picture. I work with Indians here in the Philippines, and some are cleaner or smell nicer than most Filipinos. Others got married to Filipinos who use their brain and heart beyond seeing color. Once again, there are exceptions to the rule, but the truth is, overall, Indians are looked down on in the Philippines, and that is the truth. Thanks for listening. God bless.